Hi, Thomas the Hermit here, and today I'm going to talk about the need to keep both feet on the ground as you advance in the spiritual life. Now, the idea that you can go to great heights or great experiences in your prayer without laying a proper foundation is a big mistake. And people who are tempted into this might be deluded. Now, the fact of the matter is that the contemplative life is very difficult. Contemplative states are psychologically altering. They create an alternative perspective. And a person who is not rooted with their feet firmly planted in reality can really end up being deluded. They can even be misled by the devil, and they can come up with all sorts of issues, especially spiritual pride. Such a person can end in ruin in the contemplative walk. It is very necessary, if you are going to venture onto this path of contemplation, that you keep both feet on the ground. Now, how do we do that? Well, there's different ways that contemplatives throughout history have kept their feet firmly planted on the ground. The number one is obedience to authority. Now, if you're a lay contemplative, if you have a spiritual director, which is a good idea, submitting to that director is of utmost importance. Also, if you do not have a spiritual director, submitting to the teachings and precepts of the church. If you are not Catholic, submitting to your pastor of the church that you attend. Being submissive to authority is your protection in keeping yourself well grounded. The second thing that is most important for contemplatives to do is to live a practical life. Now, the temptation is to ultra-spiritualize everything. The person who ultra-spiritualizes everything is heading for disaster. These states, this altered psychology needs to be balanced with a person who is attaining and looking after their everyday affairs in accordance with their abilities and with God's will. Now, of course, that's going to vary from person to person. Some are going to have more practical things that is required of them than others. This is all part of the journey. A contemplative should never reject the cares of the world, but should always embrace them as being a part of God's will. Submitting to these things that we are responsible for and doing them is another way of keeping yourself well grounded. Now, another avenue of keeping yourself well grounded as you go deeper into the contemplative spirituality is humility. Now, humility, which I covered in another video, you may want to look at that. Humility is very difficult to obtain. To think that humility is walking around telling yourself that you aren't any good and things like that, and that's what humility is, you might be shocked to find out that may just be another form of pride. Now, humility is granted to the contemplative, in my experience, through humiliations. Humiliations are acquired in everyday life, whether we have to shut our mouth to the opinion of someone else and humble our intellect, or we have to be of service to someone else, because that's what is called for at the time, or if we have to do some task or we have to allow our reputation to be attacked. those things will happen on a regular basis, and embracing those humiliations will help you to engender greater humility into your life. Be very careful with false humility. It is only a form of spiritual pride. So when I am doing things in my everyday life, when I'm doing things like fixing my vehicle, when I'm doing things like working, when I am following the divine office every day faithfully, when I am doing something very worldly, like I made a video about killing a chicken, or milking a goat. Now, doing practical things, like cleaning the dishes or cooking for the people that I'm staying with, all of these things would fall under doing practical things. And as I do those will help me to maintain balance so that I can climb higher into the spiritual life. Is there a chance or a time that a contemplative might be able to devote a lot of time to prayer? Of course there is. But denying the practical will really only hold you back. Now, taking note that doing the practical and keeping your feet on the ground is a task. It takes time. And it takes time to develop a strong foundation so that you can soar higher into Jesus' arms. This is Thomas the Hermit. Say a prayer for me. I need it, and I am praying for you. I'll talk to you later.